Hi everyone, Doug and Julie here with our 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E electric vehicle. In the world of electric vehicles, the number one concern for potential EV buyers is charging, or more accurately, charging convenience, i.e. where can I get a charge? How long will it take me to charge? Is charging hard to do? We're coming up on 1 year of owning our Mach-E, so in this video, I'd like to share what we've discovered about charging so far. First, a brief primer, and I apologize if any of this is already obvious to you. An EV's battery size is measured in kilowatt hours. Our Mach-E has a 99 kilowatt hour battery, of which 88 kilowatt hours is usable, giving us 300 miles of EPA rated range. Charging speed is measured in kilowatts. Currently, the fastest charging EVs can charge at over 200 kilowatts, but most fall between 100 and 200 kilowatts. Anything under 100 kilowatts is generally considered pretty slow. Our Mach-E peaks at 150 kilowatts, but averages about 100 kilowatts when DC fast charging. When talking about charging an EV's battery, we're usually referring to one of three different levels, cleverly named Level 1, Level 2, and Level 3. In simple terms, Level 1 is charging from a standard household outlet. This is the easiest charging as these outlets are everywhere, but it's also the slowest, only adding about 3 to 5 miles of range for every hour of charging. We've never charged on Level 1 as if we wanted to charge our Mach-E from 0 to full, it would take almost 4 days. Level 2 charging is significantly faster, adding about 20 to 30 miles of range for every hour of charging. Level 2 chargers can be found in a number of places, and are most likely the ones you'll find at a restaurant, hotel, or maybe an airport. You can charge Level 2 at home, but it requires a larger 240 volt outlet, like a dryer outlet. To get the most out of an EV, it's highly recommended to have one installed in the garage or carport, close to wherever the EV will be parked. We had this NEMA 1450 outlet installed while we were waiting for our car's delivery. It cost us about $600 with a licensed electrician. On Level 2, we found our Mach-E charges about 10% an hour, so if we wanted to charge our Mach-E from 0 to full, it would take a little over 10 hours, basically overnight. Level 3 charging, more accurately referred to as DC fast charging, is the fastest way to charge your EV. However, it can't be done at home. You'll have to go to one of the growing number of fast charging stations around the country. Level 3 charging can add 150 to 350 miles of range or more for every hour of charging. The large disparity is very dependent on each car's charging technology. For example, a Chevy Bolt fast charges at about 50 kilowatts and takes a good hour to charge from 10 to 80%. But a Porsche Taycan can charge at over 200 kilowatts and can reach 80% in under 20 minutes. Our Mach-E's peak charging speed is 150 kilowatts, but averages around 100 kilowatts during a charge, which takes about 40 to 45 minutes to reach 80%. And why are we talking about charging to 80%, you ask? Well, when charging with Level 1 or Level 2, the rate of charging is pretty consistent. The charging speed at the end of a charge is pretty much the same as at the beginning. When charging with Level 3, the charge rate has what's called a charging curve to help protect the batteries. Effectively, the charge rate is faster at the beginning of the charging session, but slows down toward the end, sometimes very dramatically. Because of this, most people using Level 3 fast charging stations will stop charging when their batteries reach 80%. Currently, when our Mach-E reaches 80%, the charge rate drops down to almost Level 2 speed. This is why we can charge to 80% in about 45 minutes, but it takes another hour or more to go the full 100%. Regarding state of charge, different manufacturers have different recommendations on where to keep the battery, but there are some general guidelines that work for all EVs. For example, during colder months, Ford recommends keeping the car's state of charge closer to 100%, even if that means more frequent charging. But during the warmer months, Ford recommends less frequent charging and not to charge above 90% unless absolutely necessary. And in all cases, Ford recommends keeping the car above 15% state of charge. This is pretty much in line with most manufacturers, as the general consensus is to keep the state of charge between 20 and 80%. It's important to note these recommendations are not hard and fast rules, but they are there to help extend the battery life. Frequently pushing the batteries to extremes is detrimental to long-term battery health. Level 1 and Level 2 charging is done using one of these. They're commonly referred to as chargers, but the charger is actually part of the car's electrical systems. This is actually called an EVSE, or Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment. These are mostly glorified extension cords, although some are smart EVSEs and can be programmed to charge at specific times, all while keeping you updated through an app on your phone. For about the first 9 months of ownership, we used the factory EVSE from Ford. One end has interchangeable plugs to fit either a standard outlet or a 240 volt outlet, and the other end simply plugs into the car. Most of the time, we had this mounted to the wall in the garage, but would pack it up and throw it in the back of the car for longer trips. More recently, we've upgraded to a more permanent solution in our garage. At the end of September, we bought this Grizzle E wall-mounted EVSC for about $460. It's a little faster than the factory EVSC, but more importantly, it's a more robust unit and should perform better when we add another EV sometime next year. Hopefully. So now we carry the factory EVSC in the car at all times, in case of emergencies. And speaking of emergencies, we also carry 2 plug adapters. One is a NEMA 1430 to 1450 adapter. The 1430 is a more standard dryer plug, so this would allow us to charge at any home dryer location, if the cord reaches. The other adapter is a Tesla to J1772 connector, which would allow us to charge at any level 2 Tesla destination chargers, but not a Tesla supercharger. The likelihood of us needing either of these adapters is pretty low, but as the level 3 charging network is still very much in its infancy, we simply want to have as many charging options as possible. So as we get into how we are charging, we have to acknowledge that we are in the perfect scenario to own an EV. Not everybody has the convenience of their own home, much less a garage where charging is made tremendously easy. On top of that, literally, our home has solar panels, so most of our electricity is free. We participate in something called net metering, where we effectively bank kilowatt hours during the summer and use them during the winter, usually balancing out over the year. Since we've had the EV, there have been a few months where we've used too many kilowatt hours and have had to pay a little extra on our electric bill, but it's still way cheaper than the cost of putting gasoline in a car's tank. More on that later. We should also note that we mostly work from home and don't have a regular commuting schedule, so our charging can be pretty inconsistent. As I indicated before, we've never even tried charging at level 1 with a standard outlet. Almost all of our charging has been done here. With our car's good range and our unusual schedule, we can easily go a couple of weeks or more before we need to think about plugging in. We usually start thinking about charging when the battery drops below 50%, and we have our car set up to stop charging at 90%. If we're about to head out for a longer trip, we'll charge to 100% just before leaving. A lot of EV owners will charge their cars overnight, and now that our Mach-E has a permanent spot in the garage, that's pretty much what we do too. However, for about the first 8 months of ownership, the car lived outside and we would only charge during the day. The biggest reason for this is, while we live in a safe neighborhood, we still wanted our car and EVSC locked up tight while we sleep. But also, the reality is we really don't often run the car down to such a low charge that it needs to spend a lot of time plugged in. Most of our home charging sessions only last a few hours. That's easy to do in an afternoon or evening before going to bed. Where potential EV owners are likely most concerned with charging is when taking a long trip. Depending where you live, finding reliable DC fast charging can be a challenge. So far here in Oregon, and on the West Coast in general, we haven't found this to be the case. This is largely helped by the number of apps you can use. For example, you can use a Better Route Planner to help plan a road trip, and the PlugShare and the Electrify America apps can give you specific information about the charging stations. Not to mention the car itself can plot out a route with appropriate charging stations along the way. Another big part of making charging easy is Ford's Plug and Charge program, where with a partner like Electrify America, we can just pull up to the charge station, plug in, and it should just start charging. In our early months of ownership, we tested this and are happy to report it worked perfectly. Square it up. There you go. Just connecting.
Connecting. That turned blue.
I think we're connected. I think we're working.
Processing payment. Payment authorized. It is initiating the charge.
Nice. Additionally, Julie has had to travel to the Seattle area a few times for work, and we're happy to report it worked perfectly again and again.
So this is Julie's solo trip to Renton, Washington from Beaverton. I checked into the hotel and then found the Electrify America at a Target. It was very easy. I plugged in, it found the Mach-E, and then I just said continue, so it would start charging.
With these successes behind us, we felt confident we could take on a longer road trip. So in late June 2022, we drove over 1,600 miles through parts of Oregon and California. If you're curious how that turned out, check out episode 5 of the Mach-E files on my channel. Spoiler alert, it was wonderful, if not 100% trouble-free. A couple of big charging-related takeaways from our road trip. The first is, no matter how good your car's built-in navigation is, always plan ahead. While our trip went great, the reality is the current charging infrastructure can be a bit unreliable, and planning ahead means you can prepare with alternate plans if you run into issues. Our average charging stop was right about 30 minutes. That sounds like a lot, but when you're on a long trip, we appreciate the time to get out of the car for a while to walk around, use the restroom, and maybe get something to eat or drink. On stretches that we had done before in a gas car, the EV trip time wasn't that much longer, and we felt more rested at the end of the day. Another takeaway is how much we appreciated plug and charge. Anytime we were at an Electrify America charging station, which was every stop but one, we could just pull up, plug in, and the car would start charging. You'd think it wouldn't be a big deal to pull out a credit card or open an app, but once you've experienced the ease of plug and charge, any other way to pay just seems unnecessary and a waste of time. At the one stop we had that wasn't an Electrify America, I couldn't get the app to work at all, and wasted a good 5 to 10 minutes before giving up and just using a credit card. Plug and charge is a simple thing, but it makes the experience so much nicer. Speaking of paying, another thing I want to highlight here is charging cost. Yes, if you buy an EV, your electricity bill will likely go up. But we've found that cost is significantly cheaper than the cost of gasoline for an ICE vehicle. Since we have solar panels, it's difficult to say how much we're spending at home to charge. Mostly our kilowatt hours are covered by the solar energy produced. Before buying our EV, our electricity bill was about $12 a month. This covers taxes and fees as we're still connected to the grid. Now, most months that's still our number, but some months might double that. Our worst bill with the EV was just under $50. If we didn't have solar, we estimate it would only take about $10 to fully charge our car, 0 to full. For comparison, empty to full in our Subaru would cost about $70, although it would go 100 miles further on a tank. But even when you factor that in, it's still 4 to 5 times the cost. On our road trip, using the much more expensive DC fast chargers, we covered over 1,600 miles for about $150. Had we taken our 30 mile per gallon Subaru, gas would have cost us about $300. No matter how you look at it, the math is pretty simple here. We're saving money when driving the EV. One final point I wanted to make is this. Since we sold our other car and likely won't buy another gas car again, we are done with gas stations. I can't overstate how nice it is to have the convenience of being able to fill up at home whenever we want to or need to. Have a short commute? You may not need to charge until the weekend. Have a longer commute? You may need to charge every night, but you can do it while you sleep. Work from home? You can pretty much charge whenever the heck you need to. That's where we are, and we love it. So overall, we've found this whole charging thing to be pretty easy. There is a little bit of a learning curve, and maybe a little bit of investment ahead of time. For sure, there's a bit of a different mindset with charging an EV versus getting gas for an ICE car. But if you're conscientious enough about keeping your devices charged, owning an EV really is just as easy. And now that we're full swing with our EV lifestyle, we have no desire to go back to gas.
What are you doing?
Okay,
What?
you're on camera.
Why?
Okay, so open the door.
Open this?
Yeah. Right side. Push, push.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, okay. You
Okay.
know what?
Huh?
I was expecting it to go.
Oh,
Never
fall all the
mind,
way in.
which doesn't make any
That's
sense.
all right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, just
Oh,
let me set this down.
okay. Now, pinch the top of the handle so the trigger releases and pull out. There you go, pull.
Okay.
And plug it right into the top.
That's all you do?
That's all you do.
Do I press this down again?
You don't need to, nope.
No.
Ta-da!
Oh, okay, doggone. That's easy.
And see the charge light turns blue.
Yeah.
So that's charging now. Now smell your hands.
Huh?
Smell your hands. They smell like gasoline? No, because it's an electric car.
Of course.